It's 1 minute moving down past the hour of 7 o'clock. This is the nation station, DBS Radio. The program is Off the Field. It's Wednesday, it's the 24th day of September, in the year 2014. And as always, on a Wednesday evening here on the nation station, we bring you Off the Field, the sports program. We look at what's happening in sports, we look at what's happening with our athletes, sportsmen and women around the island, in the region as well as on the international scene. Look at what's happening with our sports administrators, sports on a whole. And tonight, we're doing just that. You may have heard it already. Tonight, our special guest tonight is the Honorable Prime Minister of Dominica, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit. First for Dominica, we invite you, wherever you are. Let's hope this program is reaching you in stereo sound. Invite you to stick with us until 8 o'clock as we speak with the Honorable Prime Minister on sports tonight. Don't touch that dial. With no further ado, I'm going to go across and say good evening to our Honorable Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, good evening. Welcome.
Well, good evening to you, Brian Francis, and good evening to all the listeners of DBS Radio, and more specifically tonight's program, Off the Field.
Let me first of all thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for accepting the invitation to be with us on Off the Field to speak only sports. A first for us, in fact.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I've had a long day. I was in Cochrane for the most part. I walked maybe 90% of Cochrane today, and then walked maybe half of Wharton Waven today. So it's been a long day, and my day the day isn't over yet for me. I'm here on DBS, so I'm happy to be here this evening.
Mr. Prime Minister, you must be very fit. Cochrane is not an easy place to walk.
I am fit. I don't exercise as much as I should, but sometimes fitness is of the mind too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tell your mind you can do it, then you will do it.
Then you will do it. Yeah. I must say, it's been a while. I thought about this program for some time now, and thought it would be a good idea to invite you over for us to speak of sports. Of course, you're a former sports minister.
Yes, I was for some time. In the earlier part of my political career, and I've been a minister of government. I started off in the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs.
Indeed, and it's on that note I decided, okay, it would be good to have the Honorable Prime Minister, speak to us on sports, what's happening in sports, etc., etc. Before we do that, I want to start off here. Since we announced that the Prime Minister would be on this program, a lot of people have been, meeting me and saying, wow, it's the first day. They're really happy to hear that. In fact, a note came into us this evening saying, and it goes like this. I've been coaching for a very long time in the Newtown Juvenile Football Academy. And this is the first time I've ever heard a Prime Minister actually having this kind of program to address sports and its development plan on a national interest level. That came in this afternoon. It continues to say, as a sportsman coach, it gives me hope, and I hope that you include Harlem as part of your plans to develop sports. And he went on to say, lastly, let's not limit this dialogue to an occasional radio program. I invite you, sir, to engage those on the ground and dedicate it to the advancement of sports in Dominica. Those committed to the idea that sports impacts kids and community in a very positive way. Thanks for sharing the passion, and I look forward to bigger and better things. People are really happy to hear that you are here to speak sports tonight.
Well, even if you don't hear me speak on sports matters all the time, or specifically sometimes, I do have a very keen interest in sports. I continue to speak to sports administrators, both from the ministry standpoint and also the local level, the national association, some members of those associations, at the grassroots level. We continue to speak. I continue to share my concerns and my own vision and my own admonitions with regards to sports development. I am very keen on it. We have, in fact, over the years, invested a lot of resources into improving some of the sports facilities across the country. We provide tremendous financial support, and in most cases, we do not say anything publicly. We provide tremendous support to the various groups, contingents which have had to go overseas to participate in tournaments, whether it's volleyball, whether it's football, whether it's cricket, rounders,
name it.
You name it, we have been able to sponsor a number from the government standpoint and also from government agencies under our direction and control, provide some form of support to them.
Having said that, Mr. Prime Minister, let's look at things. No, what is your view, government's view on the state of sports in Dominica? Its current state, because we're looking here at, we're hearing that, sports is really, it's down. People, a lot of people are sports fans, they're enthusiasts, they're a little disappointed with the standard, etc. What's your take?
I think each one of us must take responsibility for the improvement of sports on the country. We have to start with the issue of sports administration, sports oversight, the athletes themselves. Let us take, for example, I believe that there has to be greater collaboration, cooperation between the Ministry of Sports, the Sports Division, and the various sporting organizations. There is a tendency on the part of these organizations, whether it's Dominica Cricket Association, whether it's DOC, whether it's DFA, whatever it is. And I'm not here criticizing anybody, I'm just raising the point that because the view expressed by these international bodies is that there should not be any political interference in the administration of these organizations. I think people have misunderstood what that meant. What it basically meant is that politicians should not be involved in the administration, but there is no need. There is nothing barring us from working more closely together. Too many times I get the impression that there's not a willingness for us to work together towards building the sports and advancing sports development in our country. The government has a part to play, but if you realize the government has, or the sports division has no part to play in who is selected on a national team, you understand? So the people go out to represent the country, but I believe there has to be a greater understanding and cooperation, in sports, and it should not only be a one-time issue. It should be a concerted effort, a willingness on all parts, putting sports politics aside and recognizing that we have to build sports, and because there are opportunities in sports, whether it's for scholarships and through professional development. Sports now is a career in many respects. I mean, it has money. So one can in fact make a living of the sports, whether it's basketball, football, or cricket. So you can in fact make a living out of sports. On the athletes standpoint, if we go down to the grassroots level, there is too much ill discipline among athletes at the grassroots level. Ill discipline in the sense, well, men and women do not make themselves available or avail themselves to training. You have a local tournament, it is properly sponsored, it's properly financed. You won't see teams practicing together. Men show up on Sunday morning and they play. But they will never only play in field, practicing for the entire week. They have not played together they have not practiced together as a team. So how are you going to be able to shine, so to speak, on the playing field or on the hard court if you do not practice? And the level of discipline has to be improved. And I believe the sporting associations need to take a greater, a stronger stance on ill discipline, both off and on the field. And therefore, if we address the issue of discipline at the lower levels, we will see a greater improvement on national teams. The other issue at the school level, and people might find it strange coming from me, but I have advocated this, I've spoken of this, and I've criticized this heavily, is that the secondary schools in particular are too focused on academics. And so we have almost thrown the sports and replaced it with a number of academic subjects. Now, I am not opposed to academics. It's important for students to study. It's important for them to do well. But we have to make and allocate sufficient time at the school level for sports and physical education. I have a major concern about this. And as every time you go, as years go by, there's a gradual erosion of the time allocated for physical education and sports.
Does government have any control over that in any way?
You don't want to to stay on higher and dictate to people, because at the end of the day, they have to implement government's policy. So, but we try to urge on this thing, and I have raised this matter. I have documented my concerns. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just pointing out things where I believe we need to address to improve our performances at various sporting disciplines. The other issue is that you cannot be an association, and the greatest respect to all associations, you cannot be an association and do not have a hatchery, so to speak, of athletes. A place where athletes can be nurtured, molded from a young age, so that you have a good reservoir or good supplies, whatever word you want to use, of young men and women to choose from. And the Newtown Juvenile Academy, I believe, should be under the direction and control of the Football Association. And of course, government will be more than willing to provide financing, whether it's for the payment of salaries to coaches and so forth. But it cannot continue to be a voluntary program run by Don Legal and the Newtown Football Academy.
So in other words, you tell me that the academies there needs to be more. They need to be more professional, organized.
And this is what I had proposed to the Dominica Cricket Association for some years now. I'm happy that they have now taken my offer on board and set up an academy, because we cannot address performances of our national teams based on the team that goes out. We have to look. We have to start afresh, and so we have been partnering with the Dominica Cricket Association. We have helped them build the facility in Portsmouth. We put in tremendous financial resources in this. We put in lights now at the Benjamin's Park, so it will not only be during the day that they will be practicing, but also at night. They're sleeping facilities there, and they're now manufacturing the beds so that people could sleep and spend the week and spend the holidays there. I have indicated to the President of the Cricket Association that the government of Dominica shall provide scholarships to every one of the students who is in the academy. Whether you're at primary school, whether you're at secondary school, you're at college, we'll provide you with a full scholarship, we'll pay your tuition, we'll buy your books, we'll pay for your uniform, and give you an allowance to attend this academy.
And I believe they've selected the first batch.
They have in fact selected it. They've met with the parents and the participants, and the young boys and young girls, so they were hoping to start. And we will provide financing for the general maintenance of the facility. I would like to work with the DFA, and the new president of the DFA is very amenable to these kind of suggestions. I would like to work with them, and can we not transform the Newtown Football Academy, because they have the experience, they have the skill and so on. Can we not transform this? We also need to have, tennis association should have, a crop of young men and women who we can train on. So we have to work on these issues in order for us to see where we can advance the sports.
I'm happy on that, and while you're on that, the Cricket Association, they've taken it and they've run away with it, so much so that I believe they're starting probably within the next week or two, the Cricket Academy. You've also thrown out the same offer to the Football Association. Yeah. Has there been follow-up from them?
There has not been, but things take time, and and there are things that would occupy their time. They're building the facility at Stock Farm. The government has provided land at no cost to the association, to the Football Association. So I think in time, I say the president of the Football Association is very amenable to this, and I believe that in time we can achieve this.
Mm-hmm. Going back to what you said, you mentioned there needs to be some greater collaboration, the associations and government and the private sector, I would believe as well. Is there a slight disconnect with the the associations and government as it relates to dialogue on the way forward and getting things rolling? Because what I'm gathering is it's only when they need to get money for a team to travel they get to you.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, But I think from the government standpoint, we need to advance the sports policy, the national sports policy. As you know, there's a draft on the table. There had been a lull and so on, but I know some months ago the Minister for Sports gave very clear instructions to the sports coordinator for us to re-engage the sporting fraternity in the country with a view to reviewing this. One of the challenges we had was that the CARICOM Secretariat had submitted to member states certain guidelines as to what should be included in the sports policy. You also have the Act, which was, I think, way back in 1976, which has to be reviewed in keeping with the updated situation insofar as sports management is concerned. And I believe the Sports Act and the sports policy must speak to the relationship between the Ministry of Sports and the sporting organizations and athletes. It needs to speak about time off for athletes who have been selected to national teams. It may be a situation where we have to look at certain tax incentives to employers to release their employees, to allow them to participate in practice and preparation sessions, and also to represent the country. So these are things. These are specific instructions given by the Minister of Sports to the sports coordinator to look at, and I'm hoping that very soon the Attorney General office will start looking at the drafting of the new legislation, and it will be sent out to the various stakeholders with a view to getting their feedback and their inputs, and to finalize the document going forward. The other issue has to do with the National Sports Council. It's a major issue that especially I've been one of the greatest advocate of the National Sports Council is Mr. Joseph Thomas. I mean, he was very instrumental
Absolutely.
in the coordination and drafting of this document back some time ago. But we've been studying a number of different organizations. In some countries, like St. Vincent, for example, the National Sports Council is only responsible for the sporting facilities. In Barbados, it is more comprehensive. So we're looking at the best practices, but I think we're moving more towards Barbados's arrangement, where it is beyond just a relationship, a defining of a relationship between the sports ministry and the sports association, but looking more broadly and more specifically at sports in the country.
Mr. Prime Minister, you've actually indicated quite a few of the things that I really would have liked to touch on there: the Sports Council, the sports policy, and the time off for workers. So you're telling me that these things are pretty much on the table, and we could see these things become a reality soon.
I mean, you've heard me at different functions speak of this very firmly and very passionately, because even when I became the Minister of Sports, that was a major issue, even within the government system. The ministries were refusing to give people time off to go.
I remember a popular name you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Doctrove, and maybe send my regards to Billy on the passing of his father, and also Trusser, but Billy was given a hard time. And I said, well, look, this man is going out to represent. Yes, he's making money for himself, so power to him. But he's representing Dominica. When he goes out in the middle or the pitch in India or in Australia, they're going to say he's a Dominican. And people are going to try to find out where is Dominica. And when they do research in Dominica, they may want to come to Dominica. And this is why I appointed Billy as a goodwill ambassador to facilitate his travel, but also to be able to speak about Dominica. Not only he being an umpire, but a citizen and an ambassador of our country.
The foresight was there, Mr. Prime Minister. It worked.
Even after his retirement, the title still remained, because he is still a recognized name throughout the world, and so we recognize this and so forth. We really fought very hard with the administrators of the public service, but I think eventually we won, and now people are given time off. The problem we have sometimes with the associations is that they wait too late to inform the permanent secretaries in the ministries, because obviously administrative arrangements must be made if you're going to be out for 2 weeks or a month. So there has to be this appreciation for working more diligently on all fronts, really, towards addressing this issue.
And the sports policy would guide all of that, would avoid these things, wouldn't
it? It would guide all of this, so we know upfront what it is, what we should do, how we should do it, when we should do it, what our objectives, what our aims, what our goals. It will speak to all of these things, and it will speak to who's responsible for this, or who's responsible for that. And I believe that would encapsulate a relationship, the relationship that we would we would like to achieve. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, sometimes these things boil down to personalities. And so I'm hoping that personalities do not come to the fore of what is a bigger picture, that is the advancement and development of sports in Dominica.
The program is Off the Field on DBS. It's 21 after the hour of 7 o'clock. You're absolutely correct. It's Off the Field. You did not connect to a different program. We have the Prime Minister speaking with us tonight on sports on Off the Field until 8 o'clock. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, in recent times, we've heard some announcements as it relates to facilities on the island, and it has been welcomed by the sportsmen and women, because there's been a cry for quite some time where facilities are concerned, namely the multipurpose hard-court facility, and just this week we heard mention made of a tennis facility.
Sure. Well, first of all, oftentimes I hear people criticize and say there are no sporting facilities and not enough sporting facilities and so forth. But we've invested heavily on the improvement of many sporting facilities across Dominica. I do not want to list them tonight because the list is long, from Vekas down to Piditsavan in the south and so on. So we spend monies on what is basketball court in Savanpai, in what is the second with Benjamin's Park. We should all remember what Benjamin's Park was before 2000, and now we have given the monies for lights. We should start the lights, erection of the lights very soon. They have to put the poles and so forth. But we've always been looking at, as you know, when we hosted the international netball tournament, we constructed this facility. Unfortunately, we fell into some legal issues with the contractor. It was unfortunate because, in all fairness to the contractor, they were very helpful, but they ended up having problems among themselves in Trinidad, which created problems for us here in Dominica. The matter went to court. It was an extended court battle. Eventually, the courts ruled in favor of the government. By that time, the facility had gone down quite significantly, deteriorated quite significantly. But we've always had in the drawing board the idea of constructing an indoor facility. But as you know, in where things go, everything cannot happen at the same time. We had no stadium. We now have the Windsor Park Stadium, which is one of the premier stadiums in the Caribbean, hosting international cricket. So we have decided to put in place the indoor sporting facility that would address issues of netball, basketball, volleyball. Okay, so it would include that, and that would be located at Stock Farm. What we did as a government, we took a decision in the cabinet to appoint a steering committee that is chaired by the former Minister of Education and Sports and a sports administrator, Mr. Rupert Sorrendo, who has been doing an extraordinary job on a voluntary basis, extraordinary job. And it speaks to his passion for sports and his desire to see these facilities. And we have representatives of the Volleyball Association, we have representatives of the basketball, we have representatives of the netball on the committee, and of course the sports coordinator is on that committee and so forth. So what we wanted to ensure is that before we put any ink to paper, that we speak to them about our vision, and I met with them myself, along with the Minister for Sports. I met with them and I articulated the government's vision, the government's policy in respect to the indoor facility. And I invited them to help us achieve this goal. We went to Miami. I went to Miami. I visited many facilities in Miami. I met with several contracting firms, architectural firms that have done work in Miami, constructing the facilities. And we decided to come up with a group that has done extensive work in the state of Florida to do this. We supply them with a lot of information, the topographic surveys, the photographs of the area. Mr. Sorrento sent them all of the international requirements for netball, volleyball, and basketball. And they were able to come, and then we invited them to Dominica. So they were here last week for several days. They interacted with all of the sporting fraternities in respect to this particular facility. So then they came along with a conceptual design for the facility. I have left the determination as to what the facility should look like entirely to the Minister for Sports and the associations. So I want to ensure that we get a facility which the associations have endorsed and that they were part of from day one. So this is where we are in regards to the indoor facility at Stock Farm. The State College, the president of the college is involved because obviously the college will be there. It will also include several outdoor courts because for practice purposes, they want to go up to the practice. The community here in Yampis and Stock Farm would want to do these things and so forth. We have Lime offered the government to purchase the facility or lease the facility at Canefield. And we thought it was a brilliant idea that while we're addressing the issue of basketball, volleyball, and netball, we also need to address the issue of tennis and aquatic sports. So we'll be engaged in Lime, and this is why we brought the architects down there, the engineers down there to look at the facility, and we'll be engaged in Lime with either of you to government acquiring the facilities down there or leasing it out to Lime over a period of time. So we will be engaged in Lime in that regard. It's a matter that we have to get the cabinet's approval on. Once we get the cabinet's approval, then we will start engaging Lime. But before we even come to some agreement with Lime, we've already brought the architects there, so they also can give us an architectural, an impression, a concept of the facility there. So we're moving ahead. I can say to the people of Dominica, for the indoor facility at Stock Farm, we have identified the source of financing for it. So the financing is not an issue at this stage. So once the firm comes back with some new concepts based on the suggestions, based on the inputs, based on the critique of this task force, the working group, whatever would you call it, the steering committee, and the Ministry of Sports and the sports coordinator, then they'll be invited back to review it, and once they finalize it, then we go to final drawings.
That's some significant news there, Mr. Prime Minister. The associations, they've been calling for that for some time now. Are we leaning towards, or do we prefer here probably an enclosed facility?
It's going to be an enclosed facility,
dome style. So.
Yeah. I think the associations prefer this dome style structure. And I've been told it's better for hurricanes and so forth, and so all of these issues will be taken care of. You'll have a minimum of 3,000 seats. You'll have 3 courts, center court and 2 courts. You'll have seats that you can retract if you were to use all 3 courts. You'll have offices. You'll have a gym where people could go in and build their muscles and so forth. You'll have changing facilities, showers, and the like. So when you at the end of the day, you don't have, or finishing tournament, you don't have to go on the buses all sweaty. You can take a shower and go on the bus and then go to church right after. So all of these things will be looked at in the construction of the facility.
Which brings us to the Rosa facility. There have been plans to erect a facility behind the stadium.
Yeah.
What's the latest with that?
The latest is that, and it's not a money problem from the government standpoint. We have an issue with grammar school with regards to some co-houses, and I will say very honestly, it baffles me really.
Your former school?
It baffles me that the difficulty in relocating. The relocate one, there's another one which has to be relocated, and I find that an extraordinary time has elapsed, and we have not been able to relocate this cause. It just baffles me. But so we started, but we couldn't have gone further because of the car house, which houses students at the grammar school. So I'm hoping that we can find a common understanding of all parties concerned, and get it relocated, so that we can recommence the facility. It is important for Rosa, It is important for Rosa because we see people using the gardens, and we've advised them they shouldn't use the garden because they're damaging the irrigation system. But at the same time, where do they go? So you have to sort of balance it and so on. I understand they may be damaging this stuff and so on, But where do they go? And we have to construct this facility, put in lights, put in washroom facilities there, so that the resident of Roseau who want to have a sweat in the night or in the morning, in the afternoon, can go there and play. Because obviously, you cannot have the Windsor Park open for these things on a daily basis, because the wear and tear on the Windsor Park would be tremendous. But also say to the city, to the residents of the city of Roseau, that we are committed to this facility. The money has been allocated for a while now, so the money is on the issue. It's for us to address this matter and award a new contract and get it done.
What kind of facility we are speaking of here?
For the Roseau,
The Roseau, yeah.
it's simply a playing field, a playing facility with lights. You'll have washroom facilities, so it's something where people could do some practicing and so on. You don't have enough space to have a very large playing field.
Football field.
Yeah, football field, because you're
Right.
constrained by the grammar school on one
And the
side,
road.
and the road on the other side, and of course the Windsor Park. But it is a community. Let us put it as a community facility, where those of us who take a little sweat from time to time.
There was talk,
And
I
also, it
believe.
can be a practice field and so on.
Sorry about that. There was talk, I believe, that there may be a basketball court in that area.
No, the basketball court for Roseau is at the well, it's first of all, the grammar school. Once we go to the second phase of the grammar school, we'll have its own facilities, basketball, volleyball, and so forth. So that's part of the master plan for the grammar school. We've started some work on the basketball court on Bath Road. Again, the money is available. We have some contractual delays, so we are hoping that Mr. Bernard and the Minister of Sports can get these administrative issues addressed, so that we can recommence the construction of the Bath Road hard court.
Mr. Prime Minister, how important is sports in Dominica's development? How critical is it?
I mean, it's critical, and this is why, in the height of our economic challenges, we constructed the Windsor Park Stadium. I mean, if we could have easy, because we requested of the Chinese government the stadium, and we could have diverted this money to a number of other things. Even when the World Bank advised me, and the IMF advised me that we should use this money for other issues in the government, I told them, no way. This facility is too important to our country and to sports development for me to divert this $40 million to some other part of the country or some other project. So we were adamant with the IMF, and they advised us several times in writing and during cabinet meetings with them. When I met with them in Washington, they raised the issue. The World Bank raised the issue on several occasions.
So they were trying to dissuade us.
Yeah, they tried to dissuade us on many fronts. As a matter of fact, they were even subtle threats by the IMF that they would have pulled back some resources and so forth. And my view is that, if you want to pull back resources, then that's fine with me. We'll just do what we have to do on our own. But this facility called the Windsor Park Stadium must be constructed for the people of this country. It is an investment that will assist in tourism development. It's an investment that will bring in foreign exchange, and we have seen the importance of the Windsor Park Stadium to Dominicans. And I will say to Dominicans that we have secured a test match between West Indies and Australia next year. So we've been in touch with the West Indies Cricket Board, and we iron out some administrative issues between ourselves, and we can safely say that we will get a test match.
You're breaking the news here, Mr. Prime Minister.
So it's important.
Sports
and
tourism.
we continue to invest. What we need to ensure, and to make my earlier point, is that there has to be a greater passion by sports administrators across the board. It cannot be just to go to some international, tournament
Participation.
facilities and events and so forth and so on. You have to have an intrinsic desire to see sports move. You understand? You have to want to see sports move, and I believe that we have to call to our sports administrators and sports associations to account more to the public. You understand? To me, we're here very quietly. There's election and there's a new executive, and who did they account to, really? Who did they account to? They have to account to the public. We must ensure that they publish their accounts and how much money they've received from the international association.
How disappointed are you with this kind of things happening? A lot of the associations are defunct, and you only hear about them when there's an election, etc.
I'm very disappointed because it leaves all the pressure and the weight on the Ministry of Sports and the sports coordinator and his officers to effect the kind of meaningful development in sports. I believe that all of these national sports associations, or most of them, because some of them do have access to resources, should be able to have facilities under the direction and control, and should have academies under direction and control. I would like to see more tangibles. You can't be just, okay, well, let me call Brian France, asking me whether he wants to be secretary of this association, and I'll mobilize people to vote for him. I'm knowing that Brian Francis may have no interest in really
or even know about the sport.
That's what I'm saying. So, and I don't want people to take this personal. It's nothing personal. We're having a very frank and open and candid discussion on sports and what we see can be done and should be done. And the government takes responsibility where the government has failed and or has fallen short in sports and so forth. But at the end of the day, you have X amount of resources and you have to apportion it, and sometimes you may not put in enough in one particular area and so forth and so forth. But we're committed to sports. Sports is an important part of it, of our national development. A very important part, because there's sports tourism, there's sports medicine, there are a number of areas that I believe that Dominica can benefit from.
You mentioned, Mr. Prime Minister, that government accepts its responsibility where it may have fallen short, and from time to time we hear sportsmen, and fans, enthusiasts, etc. sometimes say that sports is on the back burner where government is concerned. How do you respond to that?
I think sometimes people say so largely from an emotional standpoint. I say we have invested in a number of facilities, but we do not have sufficient structures in the respective communities to manage the facilities, and maybe the National Sports Council might be able to assist with that and the development of clubs. We have teams, you have a tournament and we put teams together, but we do not have structures. And I believe the national associations, because they're responsible for management of teams and selection of national teams, they should encourage greater administration at the community level. Understand? How do you come to a national association annual general meeting to elect an executive to run the affairs of that particular sport and discipline, and you have no club in the community, you have not been on the playing field for the last 25 years, you are not part of any team, you're part of anything whatsoever to do with sports in your respective community, then what do we expect? So we have to address the issue of the yes, you have a national association, but what about the local associations? How are they functioning? Who do they report to? How accountable are they? Would they be? So that they now the government would be better able to work with a structure. Because, for example, I have said to the Minister of Sports and so on, based on requests coming from many communities, they want to put us to erect lights on many playing fields. We have no problem with that whatsoever. We're prepared to put lights in all of the playing fields in Dominica if that's what's required. But my simple question to a number of people who we meet on the ground is, say, look, who's going to manage the facility? Who's going to be responsible turning on the lights and turning it off? Who's going to be responsible to ensure that people do not vandalize the bulbs or the structures? Who's going to be responsible? Do you know many playing fields in the country, we have had to raise resources to pay for the maintenance of these playing fields, the cutting of the grass. It's our responsibility. We've had to buy lawn mowers and so forth. And even that, you don't have a structure as to who will be responsible for it. So sometimes we have to put it in the village council, we have to use somebody else and have it at somebody's home. So we have to address the issue of the management of sports from an association standpoint at the local level.
I'm not wanting to quote you, but I believe the sports division is making some headway as it relates to what you're speaking to here, because I believe there's been efforts to have community sports committees. I think that has been done all over the island.
You have that, but you come back to the issue there in that because the associations are responsible, national associations are responsible for the management of the sports in that regard. For example, we have employed over 12 or so sports officers in addition to the sports division. We've deployed them to schools, we've deployed them to communities. We just employed some more under the National Employment Program. So we have about 15, 16 sports officers across the country in various disciplines, all in an effort towards assisting with sports administration, sports development, coaching, guidance to the young people. But that has to be fed into a better structure, in my view, understand, at the local level. So even the accountability of sports officers, those associations should call the sports officers to account. You come to my committee, okay, what's your program for this for your district and so forth? Yes, your sports officer, what's your program for this month, for this year, for the next 6 months? So I'm saying that I believe that what we may have to do is to convene a meeting of all sports associations, national sports associations across the country, and bring in other stakeholders involved, so we can discuss this thing and maybe use the opportunity to look at the sports policy, look at the opportunity to look at the Sports Act, look at the opportunity of the National Sports Council, and to, in a dispassionate manner, discuss the state of sports as it is now, and what are the 5 or 6 things we must do to improve it. I believe we have made some progress, but there's still a long way for us to go.
Mr. Prime Minister, ever since we started, our lines have been lighting up. I guess we could probably take last few minutes, a few calls. Our numbers, 1-800-327 or 448-3284 or 616-1327. If you're calling from abroad, it's 305-432-9744. Let's go to the phones of the field. Good night.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Good evening, PM. How are you? Okay. I'm not hearing you clearly,
We are hearing you loud and clear.
Yes, now I'm hearing you. Good evening.
Yes, good evening to you. Good evening.
Good evening, PM. Okay. Did I hear you? How was your family? Did I hear you say, PM, with the Sports Academy, the Newton Juvenile Sports Academy, that you all are offering scholarships, and you must be in an academy to get in with the scholarship? Only for the Newton Academy or all academies?
Well, I have said to the President of the Cricket Association,
pardon me?
that we're prepared to provide scholarships to those who will be in the academy. And I am saying also that the Newton Juvenile Academy should be under the direction and control and oversight of the Dominica Football Association.
Okay.
And the government of Dominica is prepared to partner with the Newton Juvenile Football Academy and the DFA with a view to providing some financial support and the same offer of scholarships that we give to the to Dominica Cricket Association.
Okay, why I'm asking that question, my grandson once belonged to the Portersville Academy, but he's gone to the States and he's playing in New York at college level. So he's no longer in Dominica, but I'm still concerned that I thought it was only for Newton, but now that you made it clear, sure. I understand. Now, anyway, okay, I'm happy I spoke to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then 5 more years for you again, PM. Good night. I love you.
Thank you.
5 more years.
Right,
Good night, listening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. 1-800-327, that line made possible through Lime. It's free of charge, 448-3284, 616-1327. Off the field, good night.
Yes, first of all, I want to just say good evening to the PM, and I want to just commend the government of Dominica for the tremendous input, support they've been giving in sports. Of course, as you know, sports is an integral part of human development, and certainly that is something that should be underscored. I just want to say that Dr. Rudy Webster, the sports psychologist, stated that every dollar spent on sport is $3 less spent in the hospital, which I agree. Of course, we know that world over the stress and strain of the economies, it's not always wise to pump a lot of money into sports. But I'm happy that the government is taking the initiative to build that indoor sports center. I can tell you the other day I was in Atlanta, and every morning these guys get up and they go to the indoor center and play some 1 hour basketball before going to work. And the business people are saying that these guys who play sports produce quite a lot. So I'm really happy that the government is taking on that initiative to build that sports center, and I'm sure they will continue to do the best for sport. Of course, Special Olympics have benefited from financial contribution, and again, as we prepare for the 2015 Games in Los Angeles, I'm sure the Honorable Prime Minister will give some input in terms of financial support. Once again, thank you very much, sir, for the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. 1-800-327-448-3284. A very interesting point there. Every $1 spent, that's said by Dr. Rudy Webster, it's $3 less in health.
It's important for us to exercise, and even at the government system, I had proposed to the public service that each ministry should 1 day a week leave work at 3 o'clock and go across to the stadium to exercise, and to bring attention to the need for us to remain healthy and to fight CNCDs, particularly diabetes and hypertension. So a few of them have taken on board. They do so from time to time. But I really like it to be part of the program. It's important, for us to exercise and to be involved in sports.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the phone. Off the field. Good night. Hello.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Good evening to you, Brian, and good evening to the Honorable Prime Minister.
Hi. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Just to say that this is exciting news for our sportsmen and sportswomen. And I want to say that I'm very pleased that not only are we looking at some of the disciplines, but all of the sporting disciplines, in particular the indoor sporting facility. This is huge news for Dominica, because I can say to you, it is not going to be a white elephant. Our associations, basketball, netball, volleyball, we can go to international and regional tournaments and bid for activities. Since the announcement was made in St. Joseph, in fact, I've been in contact with Molly Rohn, who is the IFNA president, and she is insisting that our facility meets international standards, because Dominica will become a hub for international tournaments. We can go out there, we can bid, and no longer do international teams play those sports outside. It has to be indoor, parquet floor, and those kind of things. So it will reap tremendous benefits in terms of sports tourism. So let us stay focused, and to our sporting associations, let us get ready. Put the systems in place so that our players and our organizations can take advantage of this huge news that we are hearing tonight. Thank you so much.
Important point. I know
Thank you,
I know for a fact the Volleyball Association have had to pass on several tournaments over the years. So too the Basketball Association, and of course the Netball Association, because we just don't have the facilities. You can imagine if we have a volleyball tournament and you have 15 teams. How many hotel rooms can be filled? How many taxi operators can get work from the airport? How many vendors can sell? So it is going to be a major benefit to us, and the same way that the Windsor Park has brought in some revenue and into the country, these facilities are going to be tremendous in so far as sports tourism is concerned.
One of the calls we've been hearing is for an artificial track for track and field, Mr. Prime Minister.
That is something we have to look at. We have to address the issue of the location. It's something that we've been looking at, and I know I have heard the the DOC indicated that they're looking at constructing this, and they're looking to the government for some land and so forth. So we're keen on working with them on that. So the issue is the location. So we're looking at, and the question is, can we not use one of the existing playing fields and transform it to this? There has been that kind of discussion and exploration and so forth. It's an issue that we're looking at.
I believe they mentioned Warner. Warner would be a little.
Well, we have not really looked at it. I know based on what I heard on the radio and on the streets, that the DOC is looking at Warner and so forth. But if they believe that Warner is an ideally suited location, the government will be more than willing to make some lands available. The government itself has some lands up there, and the DSS has some lands, and I'm sure the DSS wouldn't mind selling to the government some land for this facility.
The program is Off the Field. Off the Field, good evening.
Good night, Mr. Brian.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Loving, godly Prime Minister.
Good night to you, ma'am. Good night.
I am not a sport people. I am an elderly lady. But since I hear my Prime Minister voice, I must tell him good night. And the Lord be with him, and the Lord will give him strength and help to help the poor people. Barry Baron, you know.
I know you very well. How are you?
Not too bad, so not too bad, not too bad. I'm so glad to hear from you, and I'm glad to call you tonight, and I'll sleep well.
Okay, man.
Okay, and the other word I'll tell you in of the ear.
Okay.
You know. Bye-bye, good night.
It's my friend from
Okay.
Granby.
Yes, tremendous support. The blessings are coming, Mr. Prime Minister. We're going back to the phone, 1-800-327-448-3284, 616-1327, or if you're calling from abroad, it's 305-432-9744. Off the field, good night.
Good night, Brian. Good night, PM.
Yes, good night to you, sir.
PM, you made a very interesting statement there, and I listened very carefully. And you mentioned about the associations have to meet. How soon will be that? That's all I want to know. How soon will be that meeting with the general organization in terms of all the sporting organization and the stakeholders?
All right.
I think that can be held very soon. The Minister of Sports and the Sports Coordinator, I spoke to them last week on this, and also earlier in the week on this. And I think it matters for us to look at our schedule and to see when we can fit that meeting. I would like to be present at least for not maybe for the entire consultation, but certainly for the opening. So I believe in the next week or so, 2 weeks, we should be in a position to indicate when we would meet to discuss the National Sports Council and also the review of the act and what are some of the things that people would like to see in the new legislation, and also the national sports policy. So copies will be sent to the associations by Tuesday of next week, so at least people will have it in advance and to study it again, to review it again, and to prepare the notes. So when we come to have an informed, constructive, passionate, dispassionate discussion on sports and sports administration in Dominica.
So we're looking here at a possible national consultation on sports. National.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go back to the phone. Off the field. Good night.
Yes, good evening, Brian. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Right. You also being the Minister responsible for Social Security. How soon do you think that some policy can be placed on the Social Security point of view to assist sportsmen and women in terms of a fund in case of injuries or disabilities after playing sports for a long time? Is there anything that any policy can come in place where the Social Security can assist in that light? I just want to see if there's any thinking or training that way to assist, because some sportsmen will say they play, they get injured, at the end of the day there's nothing to fall back on. So is there something now that while you're young and then the Social Security is there to assist in that light? Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Well, I'm not in a position to respond to this question, because in respect to Social Security, for you to benefit, you have to contribute. It's like a lotto. To win it, you have to be in it. But it is a very important point you're making, and I think it is something that we may need to look at to see how we can address this issue. So it's a very valid point, because there are sportsmen who have been injured on the field, and also people who who have been national sportsmen who have been injured on other jobs, and who may not have a means of taking care of themselves. So I think it is something. It's a very valid point you're making, but I'm not in a position to say to you, well, we will do A or we will do B, because I would have to be advised on what form of structure we would have to create, who would contribute to the fund, and how would the fund be managed, and so the number of issues to consider. And I would not want to advise myself on it, and therefore I'm not in a position tonight to respond to your question in any specific manner. But also say that it's a very important point, and I'm sure the sports coordinator and the Minister of Sports are listening, and they have taken note of this suggestion of the issue.
And I'm sure, Mr. Prime Minister, the sports policy would look at that as well.
Yeah. I'm open to it. Yeah,
yes, and speaking of which, Alexander St. Louis, who played cricket,
right. He came to mind.
Right. He's currently in Guadeloupe, and he's in need. Certainly in need of some funds. I think we may be doing something for him. Let's go back to the phone. Off the field. Good night.
Sorry. Hello.
Yes. Good evening.
DBS that?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Yeah, good night.
Are you there, caller?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, one of the things where maybe I'd like to... Brian, what's going on?
We're fine. We're doing fine.
Okay, and good night to the PM.
Good night to you, sir. Good night.
One of the things maybe I'd like the PM to put some emphasis on, Brian, is the administration of clubs. I think some of the clubs, the administration of it, not good, or it's bad. It need improvement then to be more professional. They need improvement. So maybe the PM should really encourage those clubs to have more AGM and stuff like that. When they have reports like financial reports, give a more honest financial report to the community and the members. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, caller.
Yes, thank you very much.
Your point is noted, and I'm sure, caller, during the national consultation, that issue will be raised and discussed, because I agree with you, there has to be accountability across the board, and but at the same point too, more of us need to avail ourselves and volunteer to be part of the structures, because sometimes when you turn around and you look for people, there are not many people standing, and so it's something that we need to have new blood and more blood injected into administration of sports in Dominica. So it's important for all of us to avail ourselves, to be part of the structures and to assist at various levels with the development of sports.
I think we can take two more calls.
Sure, it's up to you. I'm fine.
Off the field, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Hi, Mr. Brian.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, Mr. Prime Minister.
Hi, good evening to you, my friend.
I would like to make my contribution to say how great that the indoor sports building
facility, yes.
Facility, so it's a good idea because some people say they don't want to go outside in the rain, they don't want to go outside in hot sun to play, and that is what that leads some. I don't know for your opinion, but for my opinion, that's something that leads people to drugs or people that to lead astray and people that is uneducated. Because of the weather conditions, they say they don't want to play that sport too hard, that's in hot sun. So if they have to play inside, maybe people stop take drugs or people come and learn this sport because now they cannot make the excuse that the sun too hot because inside they're going to be.
All
right. That's it, caller. Thank you very much. Okay.
No, it's an important point because sometimes, we play out in Dominica, and when we go to the international regional tournaments, we play indoor. So it becomes, it's difficult for guys to readjust themselves, So you're running on a piece of concrete or asphalt, and when you go in there, you have this sparky floors and all these things to run on, and some of us can fall, because we're not accustomed with the parquet floors. But one of the points I want to raise, Brian, before the program ends, and it's something that I speak about every time I get an opportunity to speak about sports, is the issue of drugs and substance abuse in sports. These things have no place in sports. You know, we cannot be on a national team and or practicing or getting ready for a tournament, and then we whip down by the river smoking a joint. You know, or we the night before we were partying up until 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking beers and black label cranberry and all these things and gin and coconut water. You know, we have to recognize that there is a future in sports. It's no longer about, we play a good tournament and go back home. People are watching you. I mean, the West Indies has its own people here watching to see who, athletes at various tournaments. They go to, all over the country, whenever tournaments, and you never know when they're there. There may be people who are recruiting people for schools in the United States, and there'll be a tournament and they want to come to see what raw talent we have in this country. So we have to stay away from the use of drugs and alcohol. These things have no part in sports. If we're serious about sports, then we have to stay away from these things. And if we're not serious about sports, then stay out of it. But if we're going to avail ourselves, and when I hear, for example, that the association calls in 30 people for training and only 12 show up, how did you get selected? And if you get selected, why not show up? So if you have 12, how are you going to put a team together? Where the reserves? So it's something that we have to look at in terms of discipline and the use of drugs and alcohol in sports. And I'm really appealing and urging sportsmen and sportswomen, and all of us in general, that the use of these things, can impede our progress and our strength. So it's something that we have to pay particular attention to.
Do you think the association at this point need to get tough on this?
But I think there has to be a greater protocol, an established protocol, and so that actions are taken. And I mean, the DFA takes actions from time to time, and you hear this and so forth. So there's associations that are very, very, very tough. And I mean, one may say, well, look, there are areas where they have not been and so forth. So we can improve those areas. But it's important for us to let people understand that no sports person is indispensable. And because this is what has affected West Indies cricket too, that there are many players over the years who believe that they're indispensable. So they can, if I'm paying you to score runs and you keep scoring dogs, well, irrespective of who you are, you have to be dropped. And this is what Australia and England have done. England will come to the West Indies and they will change 4 captains before the tournament is over. Before the tour is over, Australia is the same thing. So there's no one who can feel that he is indispensable. And this is what has affected West Indies cricket, that people who do not perform. And I mean, you have in West Indies guys go and they form the fool on the pitch, just got dog, they drop a catch, and there's nothing wrong. It's cool. And let's see where his next party for us to go online, and so the level of discipline carries itself from the villages up on the international stage. Mm-hmm. But when you see the West Indies players playing in India at the IPL, ooh, these guys are the best things. So they can score all of these runs for IPL, and then they come to play for West Indies and score a duck. It cannot be right, and we have to speak about this thing. It's not about personalizing the criticism. It's about identifying things which we have to do to improve the sport. The facilities are one, but sometimes I get the impression before there were facilities, men were doing much better. Mm-hmm. So you go to communities where you had excellent sportsmen with almost no facility.
And no shoes.
No shoes. The moment you put the facilities in, guys take it for granted, and we do not see the sportsmen advancing and developing. But it's something we have to address. So I think we have done quite a bit of work in sports as a country, all of us together, not only about government. I'm not here necessarily talk about government, I'm here to talk about sports. And you realize I have not made any reference to my party and what we have done, what we have not done. It isn't all about this tonight. It's about sports, and to see where is sports now, what can each one of us do individually, and what can we do collectively to advance sports. Pointing finger this or pointing finger that is not going to achieve it. We have to point out the shortcomings of of all of us, and I'm hoping that we all take it in the spirit in which it was intended. It's not personal. I have no personal axe to grind, if any, sports administrator in the country or sports association. And I'm throwing this out to the sports associations. Any one of you who wishes to work with the government on any matter of sports development, my door is wide open. You know, the minister is available, and I can speak for her. She's available at any time, and my door is wide open. And if you can't find me, I'm sure the minister can find me.
Mr. Prime Minister, we've gone past 8 o'clock. My final question to you tonight would be, where would you like to see sports in Dominica, say 5 years, 10 years down the line?
I would like for us to have all of the major facilities. You know, we need to have all the major facilities: the indoor facility at Stock Farm, the aquatic center, the indoor courts, and the tennis facilities. I would like us to have the sports national sports policy in place, a new legislation in place, the National Sports Council functioning, properly financed, properly administered, properly accountable. I'd like to see greater accountability on the part of all associations, every association in Dominica. I'd like to see further improvements to all the facilities across the country, in putting lights in not only necessarily all of them, but in you know, you could have one facility serving several communities in terms of lighting. We would need to see more sports academies in place, not only for cricket and football, but for the other sporting disciplines and so forth. I would like to see schools have greater emphasis on physical education and sports. Physical education and sports. I would like to see a public gym in Dominica, but it will have to be in the city of Rosa because of the large concentration of people. But a public gym where people could go in and exercise and so forth. So I would like to see those things in the country. Can they be achieved? Yes. Can they be achieved only by the government? No. We're gonna need the collaboration, the cooperation, the understanding, the support, and the working relationship among all of us, all of the associations, all of the sportsmen. You know, and I would like to see a stronger team, more of our people shining not only on the regional but international scene. And can we achieve it? Do we have the abilities to? Of course we have. We have had people in the West Indies cricket team long before any island in the OACS made it to the West Indies cricket team. So we have the capacity. We have the ability to make it. We've had several of our people going to universities and scholarships. We have had people in the NBA. So we can make it. We can in fact make it. But we can only make it if there's a commitment, if there's a dedication on our part, if there's discipline, if there's a respect for bodies and respect for the administrators. We can achieve it. Is there the political will to achieve it? Yes, there's a political will to achieve it at the highest level. I'm committed to this. I'm committing the government. I'm committed to the resources where available, but we can achieve it. So I'm hoping that the consultation would assist in advancing the various administrative structures and legal framework for sports in Dominica and sports development, and let us use that opportunity to see how we can consolidate our resources and to assist the advancement of sports. So we're committed to this. So these are some of the things I'd like to see in the country, and at the local level, that in every not every community, but there's clusters of communities, there is a sports association dealing with various aspects of sports and sports development, management of the facilities, maintenance of the facilities, you know, and development of sports and so forth.
Mr. Prime Minister, it's been a long day for you. I'm thankful that you could have stopped by and speak with us. A very cordial discussion on sports in Dominica. Happy for that. I'm sure the listeners would have been pretty happy to hear what you had to tell us on sports tonight. Thank you very much once again. I know you have a country to take care of, and we want to wish you all the best. And thanks so much for stopping by.
But it's my pleasure, and I appreciate the invitation. When I got the invitation last week, I had to look at my schedule and I had to set aside a couple of things. But I really wanted to come to engage us, because sometimes you know, it's not always about the hard politics, but it's about, you know, issues like sports and so forth. And so I'm more than willing to come and speak to you and speak to anybody on the government's vision and the government's program for sports development in Dominica. Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you to DBS, and thank you to all the listeners and who listen to us tonight. May God bless you. May God bless our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. May God bless you as well. And that's it for us on Another of the Field. Tonight, our guest was the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, speaking to us only on sports. That's it for us. Until next week, Wednesday, God's will, we'll be back with Another of the Field from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Let's hope you can join us then. But in the meantime, we invite you to stay tuned to DBS Radio. Coming up next is a repeat of Eye on Development, government